The phone calls that most come in is, I just spent $15,000 on this brand new motorcycle. I don't really care about any more power. It's a 500. I just am tired of the thing stalling, flaming out, running really hot. You can tell it's super choked up. I don't want to spend a bunch of money on it. I don't want it really louder. You know, I just want those problems solved. So I paid attention to you, took it to heart, and we developed mapping for a completely stock bike. The best thing about it is, on these 24, 25, since you can use map switches on it, we've got 2 maps in there. You always have access to 2 maps. You just have to buy that map switch that goes on your handlebar, plugs in right underneath your headlight cover. You have your white map, your green map, you have traction control, and we've turned the quick shift on. So that's why it's so cool. Now you have when the map is on the white button on the switch, you're mapped for the stock bike, or the stock bike you can take with the reeds out or the exhaust opened up, but not both. The cool thing is, if you just have the switch and you switch over to the green map, you now have our full race mapping, which is designed for, of course, the reeds out, the open intake, and an open exhaust. So you have everything. It's the only mapping you ever have to buy. This is the way that I would go, especially for the simple $349.95. Now let's take a look at one thing before we get in the power aspect of it. People are afraid, you know, hey, I'm flaming out, right? It's dying at the intersections, all this different stuff. Okay, watch this. This bike is completely stock, but this bike also has the reeds out of the intake track at the time, which is kind of why you hear the gulping through the intake track. Either way though, I've got a street tire on it. I'm on the street, so there's no slippage. You can see me just blooping it right off the gas in first gear, grabbing the brake, doing it again. It's impossible basically to flame this thing out. So that's pretty good. Now let's go to the dyno with this thing. Look at these dyno runs. Here's 4 of them on there, and on the bottom you see the air fuel ratios. Now of course this is wide open kind of stuff, but you get the gist. The very first run on the bottom, the furthest one down, the orange run, that's the bike completely stock. You can also see its accompanying air fuel line, which is the highest one. That's in the lean area. And whether you're running the bike down low, anywhere, it always strives to be 14.7 to 1. Now let's go to the next line up. The bike is completely stock. One more time. All we did was change the ECU. You take your seat off, you unclip it right here, send it to us. We have it for a day or two, you get it right back, you clip it right back in, start it up, you're good. You might reset your idle a little bit with the red knob on top of the throttle body, and you run it, and this is what you get. The yellow line. It's a real nice power gain, especially on the bottom. It revs out much further because we take the rev limiter up quite a bit, but that's a hell of a power gain for a completely stock bike, but you fixed your problem with the flaming out. It's all about the fuel, it's all about the ignition timing, designed for a relatively stock bike. Also, it's still quiet. Now let's go to the next level and let's pull the reeds out of the intake tract. Because out of both of the things, you know, the stock exhaust stifles up exhaust flow and it does cause it to run hot and it does kind of accentuate the flame outside of things. But out of the two, the reeds are more important to take out, because if a tip breaks off of a reed, well, it could stick in your intake tract, wad up your engine, and your bike is done. So we just took the reeds out. Look what a huge, huge gain it was. That's now your green line. Major power everywhere. Also, you can see on the air fuel stuff with the stock bike, it's a little, the air fuel line gets much, much better, right there about 13 to 1, but it richens up a little bit in the higher end of the spectrum. That's cool, we did that on purpose, because when you pull the reeds out, look at that green air fuel line, perfectly flat in your 13 to 2 area. So we've got it really well designed up. Now let's look at this last run. You're your red line on the very top. And that is basically our power bundle. So that is, you've now taken the stock end cap off, you have our intake tube in there, the reeds are out, the intake tube's in there, and you put on our free-flowing end cap. It's still got a spark arrestor. It's a little bit louder, but not much. It runs quite a bit cooler because it's letting the exhaust out. That much more or less chance of flaming out, stronger everywhere, but you can see what a difference that made. Now you have your red line on top. And it was always right there. It was your green map. So all you had to do was later on, just spend that small amount of money for our end cap, maybe the intake tube, get your map switch. It was right there. So it is the absolute best thing you can do to your bike.